Hello, welcome to Just One More Thing, a podcast about knitting and crafting. I'm your host, Janessa, and this is episode 12, I believe. I don't write my show notes ahead of time, so it's all just kind of like winging it, and then I rewatch as I edit and write down the show notes. So I'm like, yeah, we'll go with 12. That's a safe bet. Gotta set my tea somewhere safe, maybe over here. Okay, so I almost didn't record today. It's like almost 1 o'clock. Nope, it's 2 o'clock. It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I typically record on Tuesdays pretty early in the morning, like around 8ish, because then I don't have to deal with the garbage trucks going by, and I have like all day to edit and upload. That didn't happen today for many reasons. So yeah, the kids just now went outside. I've got a quiet house and we're recording. So when you're watching this, it might be Wednesday by the time this uploads. I don't know, maybe we'll get lucky and there will be minimal editing and I'll just fly through this with no mistakes. And you'll still get this tonight, but we'll see. And there's probably a good chance that children will interrupt at some point. It's out of my hands in the summertime. But let's get to the knitting because that's why you're here. I finished the Makariri shawl. Take it off to show you. And I'm gonna have to move my tea again, or else I'm gonna end up dipping this in the tea. We'll just hope I remember that it's there and I don't kick it over. Okay, this thing ended up so much larger than I anticipated it to be. That might be my fault in blocking it. I might have blocked it too big. After all, it is garter stitch, and I believe it's all superwash yarn. I don't know if the Malabrigo sock is. Everything else is superwash, I'm pretty sure. So that's probably the culprits behind the enormous shawl. Here's the end. When I talked to you last week, I had put in the very first stripe in this lavender color. And it's still going, and it's still going, and yeah, it's huge. And that's just the end. That was just the width of the piece. The actual length of the shawl is also quite large. So we're starting from the end. There was the second lace and stripe section. And there is the first lace and stripe section in cast on. So I honestly don't know how to wear this thing because it's so large and because the asymmetrical aspect is so big. I don't know, like I tried taking the really long ends and like leaving this end dangling, but then even this short end kind of dangles a little too far down. So then I tried putting it on like this way. That's how I had it on when I started, is I'd kind of put it on like this, and kind of arranged that little section. And kind of left this long tail down, and then like tried to wrap this section around, but then I don't know, I end up with two long tails on one end and it looks weird. I don't know how to wear it, so I'm gonna have to play with that a bit. Overall, I'm happy with the shawl. I cast this on for the Wool Slayers Treat Yourself Knit Along. It was part of their like Mother's Day. They did a Mother's Day Treat Yourself. Yeah, Mother's Day Treat Yourself Knit Along. And that's who I cast this on for and entered it in that. It was a pattern that I'd had for a long time, and I just kind of never cast it on because there were other things to cast on, but I'm glad I did. I had a little tiny bit of like, did I do something wrong? When I started about midway through, oops, wrong end. So just do like this and be able to show you better. With this striping section, midway through, I was like, I should have gotten a color that was more close to the Malabrigo. I don't think I'm gonna like this. Like I really went back and forth. I almost ripped it all out because I was like, the issue I was having was, do you see how blended that looks? Because the gray and the purple are pretty much the same tone. Like they almost, from far away, like you almost don't see it until you get really close up. But with the lavender, it really sticks out. And I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna like that. Overall though, like when I'm wearing it and when I was blocking it, it turned out. I'm happy with it. I did not do a stellar job. Let's find a lace section. You see how well that lace blocked out? Ooh, it's so pretty. This lace did not block out very well. It's still curling on the edge, and it didn't open up like I wanted it to. So I might try to reblock that end piece just a little bit. I did make one little adjustment when I was knitting this, and I decided not to do a second repeat of the lace, and I just ended it on one, basically because this thing was getting so large, and it was a difference of 11 stitches widthwise. It would have made it even longer lengthwise. This thing was already taking up a lot of space. So I just decided, I don't need that little last bit of lace. But overall, very happy with it. So if I can just figure out how to wear it, if you have any suggestions on how to wear these huge, like super long, kind of narrowish, weird triangle shapes, I can do a straight triangle. Like, you know, you kind of loop it around and you do like that. I can do, you know, rectangular things. When it comes to these, this is the first one of this shape that I've made. I've done like boomerang crescents. Those are really easy to wear. You know, lots of different shapes, but this is the first shape like this that I've knit, and I just don't know how to wear it. So I need to do some like looking around for pictures and figure out how exactly to wear a shawl of this shape. Like when I'm sitting here, it looks nice, but if I were to stand up, it'd be a mess. So if you have suggestions, please share your pictures with me on how you style and wear these shawls. I would love to see them. Okay, moving on to what's on my needles. I feel like I had a really productive week knit-wise. I was like, wow, I'm gonna have so much to share on my podcast this week. I did a lot of things. And then I started counting them up. I'm like, I didn't knit on hardly anything. So I do have a couple projects to share that have made a lot of progress, but it's only a couple of projects to share. So this one is Emerson's Flax Light Sweater, And as you can tell from the porcupine situation going on over here, I've moved on to the sleeves, which means I finished the body. Hold it over here, so there we go. It's still curling a little bit on the edge, but that'll block out. It seems small to me, but I tried it on him and it fit. It was the right length. It had a lot of extra room to grow. I had thought that this neck was going to be like way too huge, and it's not. It fits him perfectly. I was like, I don't know, the dimensions of children's heads always kind of astound me. I'm always like, that doesn't seem right. Surely his head is not that large, but I guess it is. So everything's working out. It's fitting. I like it. And I'm not too far onto the sleeve. I really wish I could knit the sleeves 2 at a time. I think I haven't gotten very far with the sleeve yet because I spend a lot of my time kind of grumbling about, if I could only be knitting these 2 at a time, this would get done so much faster. I don't know. I don't like knitting, like when it comes to socks and sleeves and pairs, mittens of things, I don't like knitting them 1 at a time. I always get done with the first one, like I should just be done with them both. And I get really aggravated. It's stupid, I know. But I'm a 2 at a time person. Even with the starting point, I very quickly ended up knitting both pieces 2 at a time because I just couldn't stand the thought of finishing one piece and then having to start all over again on the second. I don't know. It's a quirk. It's who I am. I want to knit these 2 at a time, but I have not figured out a good way to pick up all of the stitches on both sleeves and be able to knit them 2 at a time in this type of construction. Like when you're just cast on sleeves, those obviously you can do 2 at a time really easily. I don't know, this to me doesn't seem like it would work well 2 at a time. Do you know what I mean? Maybe there's a way. If there's not a way, somebody should invent a way so that I don't have to knit sleeves 1 at a time. But the one thing I do like about the sleeve is that at least this garter panel keeps your attention. It makes you like kind of like slow down just a little bit and be like, okay, yes, this row I'm going to purl, that next row I'm going to knit. I mean, really, there aren't that many stitches, so this should go pretty quickly once I put my mind to it. But, and I have till Christmas to get this done, so I'm not in a huge rush, which is my excuse for this next project that you're going to see, which is a new cast on. Yep, I went there. I did that. I talked to you guys last week about doing a Free Your Fade shawl using some hand spun yarn. So I was like, well, I'll go ahead and I'll get a little cast on to just show them, like, yeah, I've cast it on. Can we talk about potato chip knitting and just one more row? I'll go to bed after this. Well, it's a short row. I'll just do another row. Well, I finished the first color. Whoops. Let's put the extra needle down. And get out this. Okay. So, give myself a little give on there. I have finished pretty much the first color. How do I want to show this to you? This way. That works. There's the maroon. I'm working on fading into the turquoise. Whoops. Try not to lose stitches. I am gonna have to switch over from the straight. like when I kind of bunch the stitches, it all fits and it's working for right now, but I'm getting to that point where I'm going to have to put it onto some different needles. I'm knitting this on size 4s, and the yarn is pretty very light fingering to lace in some places, and so it's a very open fabric, which I like. It's going to be kind of a nice light and airy. So let's talk about the yarn on this, and then we'll talk about the pattern. Back in episode maybe around 4 or 5, 3, 4, 5, somewhere in there, I talk about some bats that I got at Estes Wool Market from Textiles Amano, and it was called the Tide Pool, was the color of the colorway, and I spun it up and I left it as singles. So there we go. Those were the 4 colors: the maroon, turquoise, green, and pink, or kind of a coral color almost. And the neat thing about how I spun, this was all happy accident. I did not plan this out for this project. But the way that I spun it, when you opened up the bat, it was laid out like this. So they were not on top of each other, they were side by side. So as I pulled them apart, you would get little, you can kind of see like little flecks of green, and in there, you can see it better from this side. And there you can see little bits of maroon and green along the sides, like where you kind of pulled them apart. Some of the colors kind of mixed a little bit. And you can see that in the knitting, I got little sections of turquoise kind of along in here. So just little pops of turquoise, and then as I fade, it's actually fading quite nicely. Like you can see, it's hard to tell, but like in here, it's hard to tell which stripes the maroon and which stripes the turquoise, because there's a little bit of both in each skein. So it's kind of like the yarn itself is doing its own little fade, but then when you fade in the pattern, it just makes it like extra fadey. I love it. I love how it's turning out. So I'm working on the turquoise now. Next up will be the green, and then this final one is the pink. Before I started this, I did some like weighing and measuring of the yarn, just to see how much yardage I was going to have. The maroon and the turquoise were about 300 yards. And I spun them maroon, turquoise, green, pink. So this one ended up being 302 yards. And this one ended up being right at 300. And they both weighed about 30, each color weighed about 30 grams. So the weights are all the same. Yardages vary a little bit. A lot. So both of these were like right at 300, which means they're pretty much the same weight. Like as far as thickness, they are about, we'll put it right there's a good. There are some very thin spots, but for the most part, it's a light fingering in both of those. The issue comes when I get to the green. This one was 382 yards. So while I do have some pretty decently thick spots in that one, at some point in this one, I end up getting really thin. I'm guessing towards the middle. A little bit. I mean, for the ends are nice and thick, but at somewhere in there we're going to get a lot of thin spots. Then I must have really not been paying attention, because by the time I got to the pink, I was getting 500. And when I was winding this one, there are a lot of, this one's definitely less fingering and more lace weight. Let me see if I can find a good spot to show you how thin it is. Not on that end. But yeah, so the pink I might end up holding double. There we go. You see how thin that one got in some spots? And they're even thinner than that in some spots on this one. So, yeah, I might have to hold the pink double. And by the time I get to that point, I think I'll be fine sacrificing some of that as a double weight, just so that it doesn't like completely fall apart. When I had them all in the hank and was looking at them all, they all seemed pretty even across the board, but then when I counted up yardage, that wasn't the case. So I don't know, we'll see how we go. That's enough about the yarn. Now let's talk about the pattern. So I'm really excited about this pattern, and I really love how she wrote it. It is paid for, so I'm not giving much away, but I will tell you the pattern is very easy to make your own. It's written less as knit this many stitches, do this, do this, do this, and more of here's my recipe. Here's how I, you know, do a section like this and then do a section like this, and then here's how you fade your colors together. So it's very simple, it's very easy to follow, and it's very easy to make longer, shorter, however you want to customize it. It's easy to work with. And I picked this one. I was going to use these after I got them done. I was like, oh, those would make a really nice find your fade. But that pattern calls for 7 colors, and at the time I didn't know if it was written similar to how this one is or not. But when I bought this one, I bought it because it only called for 3 colors. So I figured that would be a lot easier to manipulate the pattern for the yarn that I had, rather than trying to come up with other colors to go with these for a find your fade. Are we confused yet? Find your fade for your fades? She has, it's Melanie, I think it's Melanie Bird. Is that who? Or am I completely wrong? I hope I'm not wrong on that. Anyway, everyone knows about the fade patterns. They're all over Ravelry. You guys can find them. But yeah, I was really happy with how easily customizable the pattern was. I did make one little change. The pattern has you do like a small and a large and a small. I wonder if you can see that. Yeah, you can see that right there. Eyelet, which I did there, but because of how the yarn works, even blocked out, that big eyelet looks really sloppy to me. Like it really messed up this, you know, the stitch. So after that very first one, I just stayed with eyelets of the same shape or same size. And I like how that's turning out. So there you go. Very addictive, very fun. I'll give you some close-up on some of the yarn. And I really like it. So yay! That honestly has been like every time I sit down, I'm like, should I work on a sleeve or should I work on this so faded? On free your fade. I'm gonna free my fade, handspun style. So yeah, I really, really like that pattern. And you should not be surprised if you see that done before you see the sweater done, because I really hate knitting sleeves and I'll do nearly anything to avoid working on those sleeves. I need to be, it's a Christmas present for Emerson, so like I have to, that's my motivation to actually get that done. But I don't wanna The sleeves are, I don't know, they're just the worst. I don't like knitting sleeves. Maybe I should stick to vests. I also got a little bit of work done on let me pull this loop up so I don't lose it. The granny square that I'm working on for my prayer shawl ministry. I think the last time I showed you, like, I had maybe done like 3 rows of the red. So I'm back into that playful color yarn. I will probably do, I'm going to try to get 6 rows or 6 rounds out of this. Probably won't happen. I'll do as many rounds as I can with this, and then I'll finish in the red. And then it'll be just a nice little square, like, car seat throw blanket for a baby. So those are the yarny, well, the other one's kind of yarny that I've been working on, but not in the knitting or crochet sense, yarny. I did not get any spinning done this week. I wanted to. Every time I would think of, okay, what am I going to work on now? The spinning wheel was like, oh, I'm going to have to move things around. I'm going to have to set things up. I'm going to have to rearrange stuff. And so it got put on hold because it was much easier to just sit down and knit than it was to move things around in order to sit in this chair and spin. But now that I had to move everything around to do the podcast, it might be a little easier this week to like quickly get the wheel back over here and set up where it's supposed to be so that it's easier to sit down and spin. However, even though I don't have any spinning to share, I do have other craftiness to share with you. The chicken is a bit more colored in. Here we go. I found some really fun bits of that yarn that were like super sparkly. I don't know if you can see that. I think you can see that. There we go. Sparkle, sparkle. And I thought those would be super fun for those little bits around the tail. So I filled in some of that. Filled in more of his feathers around here. I'm going to try to get all of that filled in, and then I'm going to start the embroidery for like his body and the tail, and his head I'm going to embroider. And then I've got to find, I want to find some really fun bright red for his comb up here, and then I'll try to put like a little bit of grass down in here or something, and find some more bits for the cloud that I'm going to do right up in here. So he's coming along. He's making progress. It's just slow progress. I've got all these little, you know, bits of yarn and this teeny tiny crochet hook. And just as I find little bits that will work for a certain spot, like, oh, that little bit would make, that's kind of the color that I'm using for the cloud, because it's nice and kind of gray and floofy. So when I kind of search through the bag, I'm like, oh, there's a spot. And yeah, so far I've mostly been able to use this. I still haven't decided if I'm going to use these same colors for like the embroidering part on the body. I haven't got that far. I'm really playing this project by ear. I don't know how it's going to turn out. I don't know if I'm going to like it when I'm done with it. But Brooklyn really enjoys seeing the progress that I've made on her chicken. She's claimed this as her own because she drew it. And she always asks, she's like, oh, how much, have you colored in any more of my chicken yet? So this is kind of a dual art project that I'm working on with her. And it makes her really happy that she got to draw the chicken and that I'm coloring it in with yarn. She kind of gets a hoot out of that. So that is all I'm knitting, working on. It was a lot of progress. Like, I finished a shawl, I finished the body on the sweater and started a sleeve. I cast on and did like a whole fourth, basically, of a new shawl. So I know in my mind that I got it a lot done, but it just doesn't feel like a lot to talk about. I don't know. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. As far as like upcoming podcasts, the next two will probably be a normal schedule. I'm trying to look at the calendar. Yeah, I think the next two will be normal. And then I'm going to be going on vacation again to see my mom. So I don't know what's going to happen with the podcast that week that we're at her house. I don't know. Well, I may get to podcast from her house, maybe. I don't know. We'll see. I don't have a lot of like chitter chatter to talk about. Most of like what I'm watching while I knit, I'm rewatching all of Downton Abbey. I realized that I don't think I ever finished the series. I know I've watched most of like the first 4 seasons, but after that I don't know that I watched season 5 or season 6. So I'm rewatching all of that, and that has taken up quite a bit of the TV watching, podcast listening, podcast watching time that I have. So not much is going on there. We've got another birthday coming up this week. My husband's birthday is happening, so I've got to figure out what kind of cake and stuff he wants, or if he even wants one. I don't even know if he wants us to make him a cake. The kids enjoyed celebrating Father's Day, was this past weekend, and they spent the day making tons of little beaded projects for him. I think I talked about it on the podcast last week, but my sister gave Brooklyn a huge case of beads that she no longer wanted. Lots of tiny little seed beads, big beads, necklace making tools, earring backs, all kinds of stuff. So they have been very busy beading away, and they thought, well, we'll make Daddy something for, and so I think they like put fun little beads on safety pins or something and gave them to him for Father's Day. So I don't know what he'll do though. they made him projects for Father's Day, and it was sweet. So anyway, I really have nothing else to share. It's been such a boring life week because nothing has happened. But yeah, there you have it. Some knitting, a little bit of funny anecdotes, watch Downton Abbey. Anyway, we'll see you next week. Worst ending ever, by the way. It went crashed and burned on the ending. Did not stick the landing of this podcast. I apologize. I'm just gonna end it now before it gets any worse. Bye.